Let's do that. I've got some new technology and try to use tonight. So I'm bound to mess some of it up. But we, I got back that the YouTube. There's a lot of people have been watching the YouTube videos. And it's been a good thing, and the sound has been a little bit difficult to hear. So I've got a Bluetooth mic. I'm recording with my phone, so hopefully that's going to make the sound a lot better. And the people that are trying to watch on YouTube will have a lot better sound, be able to listen better. So last time, let me say this for those that are, if you're watching on YouTube, you may get frustrated with the sound, but if you can go back to last week, it's very important that you go back to last week and begin there, because we're starting some things and we're bringing them forward. So if you can, kind of just bear through last week and get through that, and hopefully the sound on this video and moving forward will be better. All right, let's get started. Now, I handed out some papers, and they say homework. If you will, you can turn those over, and I got just a couple, maybe a question or two for you real quick. If you've got a pen. All right, y'all ready? In 1,000 words, what is the essence of marriage? In 1,000 words, what is the essence of marriage? I'm kidding, obviously. Yeah, right, that, but not about the 1,000-word part. What is the essence of marriage? Jot something down real quick. What is, when you get through with that, write this one down. What is the purpose? What is the purpose of marriage? What's the purpose of marriage? All right. Probably some of you are still writing. If you've got some answer in your head, you got something that you're writing down. If you're struggling, then that kind of hits back to where we're going tonight. What is the essence of marriage? The word essence, you go back to the idea, the word essence is the root word of essential. We don't use essence as much. We use the word essential all the time. It's the deepest, most, the underlying, the greatest, the point of it. The spirit of it, what is it meant to accomplish? There's a lot of things that go into marriage. The reason that I point that out is because when people begin to get married, when they're starting to think about getting married, or they're finding a person to be married, it's important for them to understand, what's the purpose of marriage? Why are you even seeking to get married? What's the point when you go into marriage? What are you trying to accomplish? Because if the point of your marriage in your mind is because you want to have children, what's going to happen when you're unable to have children? Is your marriage then going to tank, because the essence of what you thought marriage was is not truly what the real essence of marriage is. So what did God design marriage to do? What did God design marriage to accomplish? What's the second question that I asked you? Did somebody write it down? What's the purpose? What's the purpose of marriage? What is it meant to accomplish? All right. So you have to think about those things. Why did God create marriage? What is its designed for? What is its purpose? And so you think about that. The reason God created marriage, obviously, the most important, the most fundamental thing about marriage is that God did not base Christ and the church off his picture of marriage. He based his picture of marriage off Christ and the church. So every marriage at its base is meant to be a reflection of Christ and the church. Even deeper, it's meant to be something that is triune, okay? because it's the husband, it's the wife, and it's God. Okay? So it's meant to be a trinity. All right? And so that's what the essence of marriage is meant to. So when you start struggling in these areas, because I heard a man say it this way: if you go in with the wrong essence of marriage, then it'll probably be the lack of that essence of marriage that'll cause you to be the reason to get out of the marriage. And just like the kids, or just like the struggling with the idea of that your husband's to be everything to you, your wife's to be everything to you, when that's not the case, because that was your essence, and now that's missing. That's the exact reason that now you want to flee from it and you want to get away from it. So it's important that we have an understanding of what the essence of marriage is as we go through. That's going to be a big part of what we're about to cover. That's going to be a very, very fundamental part of what we're going to go through. Okay, so we're talking about construction. Y'all remember that? We're talking about construction. We are to build our house on a rock. Now, this one, you're going to have to know a little bit about construction, but if you don't, that's okay. I'm going to explain it to you. All right. So when you build a house, number one, you lay a foundation, right? That's number one. So when you walk out to the job site, when a house has been, when the slab's been put in, you walk, there's nothing but concrete. There's nothing but concrete on the ground. What's the next thing you do? Before you stand walls, before you start framing, before you do any of that, you lay the plate down. And the plate is what ties the house to the concrete. It ties it together. Okay? So you think about, not only is that concrete, that rock, holding everything up, that rock is also holding everything down. And so it's keeping everything together. And so the plate is the glue, the nails, from a figurative standpoint, that's holding it all together. All right. For us, what that is in marriage is the covenant. The plate for us in our marriages, as we're building on this rock, is the covenant that we've made with God. So that's what we're going to talk about this week: the rule of the covenant, the plate, or the rule of the promise. All right. The promise that we've made. All right. So obviously, this is a picture of the plate. You can see it being tied. Okay, I was going to explain that, but I've already explained it. So let's move on. All right, the plate holds everything down. It's where the foundation holds it up. This is what secures it to the foundation, holding it all together. This is the covenant of marriage. All right, the rule of covenant or promise. That is, we've made a covenant. We made a covenant with God. So we must keep it. We must keep it. It seems like a pretty simple idea, right? We made a promise. Keep it. Keep it. But let's get into that a little bit more and a little bit deeper and find out why that's so important. All right. So turn to Matthew, as I put up there on the screen, turn to the book of Matthew, chapter 19. Matthew 19. Now, Jesus here is speaking. I've put verse 6 up there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back and read verses 3 through 9 where Jesus is talking, because there's this question that the Pharisees ask, and you can go back and study this, but I want to read it so we can kind of talk about this together, because I'm going to draw a few things from it. Verse 3, Matthew 19, verse 3, the Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him, and saying unto him, is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? Now, kind of looking at that and what they're saying is, can a man just put away his wife for any reason? They're asking Christ, what are the reasons? Verse 4, and he answered and said unto them, have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female? And he said, for this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. They say unto him, why did Moses then command to give a writing of divorcement and to put her away? And he saith unto them, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, suffered you to put away your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. And I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. And whosoever marrieth her which is put away doth commit adultery. Okay, all right. So let's go back to verse 6. All right. So what Jesus says, wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. Okay? So what he's saying is that God has joined these two together. This is what the covenant means. This is what happened on the wedding day. These two are joined together. And when they're joined together, what he says is let not man put asunder. Now the word put asunder means, or asunder means to literally be torn apart. Don't try to take apart what God's put together. You think about it this way. If you have any of y'all ever heard of Lexel? Lexel is an adhesive, and if you glue two boards together with Lexel and you try to take them apart, you're not going to have two boards when you get done. You're going to have one board and a piece of another one because they will literally tear each other apart trying to get apart, okay? That's the idea that's here, is that if you try to take these apart, it's impossible. It's impossible to get them apart because God has joined them together, all right? So let's move on. I'm trying to get to, all right? And what a covenant is an agreement between two parties and God where vows of promise are exchanged with the understanding that they are kept or the violator's life is forfeit. So that's the idea of a covenant. This is not a contract. This is not something simple. This is not something that is consumeristic, that's easily gotten out of, that kind of thing. Literally, if you go back when God made covenant with Abraham in Genesis 15, when God made that covenant with Abraham, he said unto him, take me an heifer of 3 years old, a she-goat 3 years old. Notice this, a ram, turtle dove, young pigeon. And he took unto him all these and divided them in the midst. What did that look like? So God is making a covenant with Abraham. This covenant is like all covenants. This is what these covenants are to be. This is how they're to be made. They would take these animals, with the exception of the turtle dove and the pigeon, the ram, the she-goat, and the heifer, and they would cut these animals in half. Not back end, front end, head to tail. Literally, they're cut in half. And they would lay them up one against another. And they would come in the midst of these animals, and they would pass through these animals back and forth and recite the vows of the covenant that they were making with each other. And the point was a reminder that if I don't keep my side, if I don't keep what I'm promising today, then my life, or as one of these animals, my life is forfeit. All right? That's what God's doing. So what did that look like? Imagine in your mind what that looked like. It was a bloody mess. And they're meeting in the middle of all of this. And it was done that way intentionally, but to help them understand the seriousness and the severity of what they were doing, what they were making. They were making a covenant. They weren't signing a contract. They weren't making some little agreement. Maybe someone says, I don't understand why the vows that I made so and so many years ago, when I made a little promise to somebody so and so many years ago, why should I be held responsible for those little things that, and I said, no, you didn't make a little promise. And you may have not understood what you were doing at the time, but that still doesn't mean that God holds it any less serious just because you didn't take the time to study it and understand it, okay? You made a covenant with God, all right? You made a covenant with God. What this does is it's a depiction of Christ. Again, this is to be a depiction of Christ. The essence of marriage is to depict the relationship between Christ and the church. Each of us are to put on display this relationship in our marriage. All right. In the same way Christ was willing to give himself and shed his blood for us, we broke the original covenant of Adam. All of us are guilty of it. Christ is willing to give himself for us. All right. We have been born again by trusting him and joined to him through the covenant in his blood. In other words, we're one flesh with Christ. All of this you see in this same covenant with Jesus. All right. And we cannot be ripped apart from Christ. All right. What's the promise that Christ made? We hold on to it all the time. It's in the book of Hebrews. I will never leave. I will never leave you nor forsake you. What's he saying? No matter what happens, I'm here. What is the promise of marriage? No matter what happens, I'm here. And it might get rough 5 years. It might get rough 10 years. But come hell or high water, in 25 years, I'm going to be here. Because that's the promise that we're making, not to each other, to God. Right? And in that way, we are symbolizing that part of what Christ is doing for us. He will never leave us. We could never leave him if we wanted to, and we could never be separated from Christ because we are joined to him. All right. Continue on. One flesh. What does it say? Jesus quoted it from Genesis chapter 2, and we're going to go back there in a moment. But Genesis chapter 2, look at verse 5, if you're still in Matthew 19, verse 5. And he said, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. What does that mean? What does that mean, that they shall be one flesh? I mean, we could get into a few things. I'm not going to go to them for the sake of this, but spiritually speaking, what does it mean? The two shall become one flesh. What does it mean? It's not something I think we can fully understand or comprehend. We know parts of it. All right? But what does it mean? This is a miraculous work of God. This is the point. That what it means to be one flesh is something that we cannot completely understand. There's no more I. There's no more me. There's we. There's ours. What we have together is ours. There again, symbolized in the covenant with Jesus Christ, right? Because Christ took our liabilities. And what we owed, he owed. He gave us his assets, which is his righteousness, and shared that with us, and we're joint heirs with Jesus Christ, right? So what's his is ours, and what's ours is his. There's no more singularity in identity. There's no more individuality is the word I'm looking for in identity, but we are identified together. Our identity is in him. The same thing is true at marriage. That's why you say Mr. and Mrs. whatever the groom's name is, right? Because they're no longer a single. They're no longer an individual, but they are now together. This is a miraculous work of God. It's something we can't understand. And what the Bible says is what God has put together. And on that wedding day, when you make those vows to God, God puts it together. God puts it together. All right? And this is true whether we understand that completely or not. God's put it together and cannot be separated. All right, think about that for a moment. I went ahead a little bit, but cannot be separated. You think about what happens in 25 years, you've been married 25 years, all of a sudden we're going to get divorced and let's just call it quits. You can't. There's a portion of each other that are tied to each other for all eternity. That's the way, or till death. Let me say it that way, because that's the way it works. There is a part of her being that's written in my soul to a degree because God put it together that way, and it cannot be separated. We can try to run from it, and it's going to make the situation worse and worse and worse the more we try to get at it, divorce it, and all of that kind of idea, because we're making the situation worse. All right, a wedding today. A wedding today. This is an important topic. Often is a failure to understand the seriousness of what's really happening on that day. All right, evidence for that. Just because we don't understand doesn't mean that He takes it less serious. What God's joined together, we are not to attempt to tear apart. What is the average amount spent on a wedding day right now in the United States? Anybody got a clue? You're probably going to guess high, to be honest with you. 30? Close. 35. $36,000. The average amount of money spent on a wedding, wedding day in America right now. Some range as low as $10,000. Some have gone above $100,000 in one day. What is all of that about? The point. Materialistic, certainly. Appearances. What else? Somebody say something else. A show. Social event. That's right. How much time is spent planning for this right here? I wonder how much time we spend planning the wedding versus how much time we spend planning to make a covenant with God. We probably would do well to reverse the two, right? And the time we spend planning for the covenant, spend planning the wedding. And the time we spend planning the wedding, use that time to plan on making a covenant with God, right? Maybe we should spend more time preparing to make a covenant than having a beautiful event. Anybody ever heard of this before? Yep. This issue. This is my day. I may be wrong, not trying to be too funny here, but I thought the Bible said this is the day that the Lord hath made. It's not your day, it's the Lord's day. He made it. All right? Right? It's pretty obvious. This is what you hear from the world. This is what society breathes. This is my day. This day's all about who? The bride. Why not the groom? Why not the groom? He never gets part of it, right? But it's always about the bride. This is about her day. This is the attitude that is often associated with the wedding day. In fact, it's so bad that little girls have in their minds their wedding day. And there are cases, and I may be wrong, but I feel like there are cases that I've witnessed before that she was more focused on getting married than who she was married. Because she wanted to get married. She wanted to have a day about her. This is very, very, and as people don't understand, you are making a covenant with God. All right? The seriousness of our life consequences, that in the last days they'll be eating and drinking, and they'll be doing what? Marrying and giving in marriage, that we take everything we do with a grain of salt. We're just living, we're pleasing ourselves. It doesn't matter how it relates to God in any way. All right. The girl dreams of her day and the day that she'll get married. In her mind, it's a day all about her. Again, social ideas. This couldn't be further from the truth. Couldn't be further from truth. In fact, this is not only an awful perception, but the opposite of what she should actually be thinking. Right? Because it's not a day about her. This is the day that she no longer exists as an individual. This is her last day as an individual. The day she gets married and she makes the vows before God and her husband is the day that she is now tied to him and one flesh with him. All right? Basically, we're going into it with being a me monster. And if you can't see that, that's Godzilla with a veil on, Godzilla. That's where that idea comes from. All right. So what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to get into marriage? This idea right here. Burn the ships. You're going to an island that you can't get off of. And when you get to that island, burn the ships. What that means is that as you're going into marriage, you destroy every escape plan that you might have, right? All right. You have no way out of marriage. It shouldn't even be in our minds that we're considering if something happens, I would do this, this, this. I've got this in place. I've got this saved. I've got this here. This shouldn't even be in our minds. We have no way out. All right. You don't have to turn here, but you can, if you're making notes, you can reference this. 1 Kings 19, verse 21. This is my favorite scriptural example of this idea. What's happening here is Elijah is going to get Elisha after God has called Elisha to be the next prophet, right? And so Elijah goes to get Elisha, tells him what's happening, and then Elisha was like, give me a few minutes, let me tell my parents bye, and I'm coming to follow you. And what he does is he's plowing a field in that moment, and he takes the oxen that he's plowing the field with, which is his livelihood, his job. He takes the oxen, he takes the implements, and he destroys the implements and builds an altar and then sacrifices the oxen on the altar. So what's he doing? He's burning his escape plan. Literally, he has no way out of doing what God's called him to do. He is being the next prophet. There's no going back to plow the field anymore. He's the prophet no matter how bad it gets, because that's what God's called him to do. The same's true for our marriages, that we have no way out. Regardless of what happens, we're married, we're headed down this road, and there is no way out. This is not even an option for us. We're not even considering it. All right? No prenuptial agreements and stuff like that. I think that's pretty much something we already understand, because going in it with a prenuptial agreement means we already got 1 foot out the door before we get there, right? We're not deciding now how we're going to split everything when we get a divorce, because that's going in having already destroyed. All right? There is no way out. And then somebody inevitably will ask me, what about the two biblical reasons for divorce? I'm glad you asked. All right. One is 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 15, right? 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 15 makes this statement, but if the unbelieving, hence the red word, unbelieving, depart, let him depart. A brother or sister is not under bondage in such cases, but God hath called us to peace. What's he saying here? What he's saying is that if two lost people get married, one of those people gets saved, and the other chooses to leave because of that, then let him go. Let him go. They're not held responsible in this particular case, because they cannot control the actions of the other one who was made a covenant when they were lost and they choose to leave. And again, what he go back and read that, what he says is that if the unbelieving chooses to say, that the saved person is required to keep his end of the covenant. God never lets the saved person out. Never lets the saved person out. And he says the saved person is not responsible in the case that the unbelieving depart. All right. So the reason that I mention this is this one is because it's amazing how quick that when two people get divorced, we start pointing fingers about which one of them's lost. All right. But this is very clearly defined, that they both have to be lost before they get married, and that one of them has to get saved in the process of their marriage, and then the other one chooses to leave because of that salvation, right? Pretty clear. All right. The next one we actually have recorded right here. Now, the reason I say biblical reasons for divorce, and I put that in quotes, is because this is what we do. So this is where the Bible justifies my divorce. This is where the Bible gives me the right out. in verse 9. This one's always pointed out. All right. And Jesus said that. I think I put it up here. Yeah, I put it on the screen. Okay. And so Jesus says this quotes from the Lord. He says, "And I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery." Right? Why is that important? In fact, not only are these two words different, you go back to the Greek words, and this word and that word are different in the Greek. So he says that if a man put away his wife, except it be for the cause of fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery, and whosoever marry her, which is put away, doth commit adultery. Why does he say it this way? Whosoever shall put away his wife. It's specifically, I said, let me just tell you what Jesus is talking about. Jesus is setting up a scenario that this is the only way. And it's a scenario that we actually have recorded for us in the scripture. He's not speaking about after the covenant, he's speaking about before the covenant. Can you think of an account in the Bible where a woman was accused of cheating on her husband during the process of their espousal, and the husband sought to put her away by a bill of divorcement before they even got married? Anybody? Joseph and Mary, right? He was persuaded against that, rightfully so. But that's an example of that particular situation taking place. What Jesus is saying is that when a man purchases a wife, literally, and a spousal is a binding contract until the making of the covenant, a man would purchase a wife by dowry from another man. He would purchase this man's daughter. And what would take place is they would begin to make this covenant or this contract, this espousal, about how this was going to work out. So let's suppose for a moment that they make this contract and this espousal, and a man and a woman are agreed upon. The dowry is paid, and a part of the terms of this contract is that she is to be a virgin. Right? This needs to be proven at the gate. Wouldn't you love to have that job? Geez, what a disaster, right? But it has to be proven at the gate. Now, I'm not going to get into tonight into the ways that took place because it's pretty rough, but it has to be proven. Why? Why? Because we have to prove that this man actually received what he had paid for because it was a contract. The covenant then is made, it's consummated, and it's fulfilled, right? And so that way, once it happens, the father of the bride has the legal right to say, no, this was proven at the gate. She was what I said. You don't have the right to divorce her. In other words, you have to handle that right now. That's the reason Jesus uses the word fornication and not adultery. Otherwise, he would say if it was after the covenant of marriage, it would be except for adultery, and shall marry another man, committeth adultery. Because anybody within the bounds of marriage that steps outside of the bounds of marriage commits adultery, right? Anything before the marriage covenant is fornication. All right? So what Jesus is saying is that this is not after marriage. So people ask, well, what am I supposed to do when he cheats on me? Just what you promised you were going to do, for better or for worse, when you married him. You hang on to him. You work through it. Can a marriage be restored after adultery? Absolutely. Is that what God intends to do? Absolutely. Why? Because Christ accepted us. And how many times do we find ourselves still in a place where we are committing spiritual fornication? We're putting something ahead of him in the same sense, and he forgives us time and time again. And so we're to take that example, right? Okay, you can go to 2 Corinthians chapter 11 for that if you need some Bible on it. All right, point. Here's the point. Saved people, once in, there is no way out. To saved people, once you get in here, there is no way for you to get out. It's over, right? legally, with you in the Lord. You've made a promise, a vow to God. You've made a covenant rather. We keep it. Ecclesiastes 5:5. We already know this, but I want to mention it anyway. Better is it that thou shouldest not vow than that thou shouldest vow and not pay. Never is this truer except than when you make a vow to God. When you make a vow to God, you better repay that vow. All right. So we stay, right? No matter what, come hell or high water, we stay in this marriage. This is the glue. This promise is the glue because it lets the other one know, not that you can go do whatever you want to and I'm going to be here. That's not the point. But no matter how awful this gets, you don't have to be waking up at night whether or not I'm going to leave you. I'm here. I'm here. This isn't a pass to go do whatever you want to. This is the liberty and the glue to let you know that we're here and we're going to be here together. Right? This is the glue that anchors us, that holds us to this rock, which is Christ. All right. We aren't going anywhere. All right. Come on, babe. What comes, we're going to work through it. Committed our lives to each other and God. Why? All right. Marriage is sacred. What does the word sacred mean? Sacred means that it is not, what's the word that I'm looking for? It just left my mind. Secular is the word that I'm looking for. It is in connection with God. Secular means that has nothing to do with God. Marriage is sacred and that it has everything to do with God. It is a sacred event. It is a sacred thing. Marriage is good, right? Do we believe that? Marriage is good. Marriage, for whatever reason, is one of the few things in life where people don't understand the essence, get into an airplane, don't know how to run the controls, fly it into a mountain, and be like, well, that's just a bad airplane we got a hold of, right? But that's what the world does. They drive an airplane or drive a car into a crash and blame the car for their lack of ability to understand it and operate it correctly. When the Bible tells us these things. God made marriage. God made it, right? Do we believe that? God designed it. God made it. God made everything to do with it. God made it. And when God makes something, it's good. All right, turn back real quick to Genesis chapter 2. This is a reference to, well, actually, we're going to look at the leave and cleave probably a little later on, but we're going to look around Genesis chapter 2 for a moment, verse 18. So while you're turning there, let me explain to you a little bit about Jewish writings and how they wrote, how they recorded things, okay? You'll find this a lot in the Bible. Often what takes place is when they're recording, they'll tell you, short story, it happened this way. Long story, this is what took place. So this is what we see in Genesis chapter 1, Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 1, you go back to verse 26, it said, God said, let us make man in our own image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air. All of this, so God created, verse 27, God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he him. Short story, right? Chapter 2 is long story. What does it look like? Well, God starts giving us the details of how he created man. All right. So everything happening in chapter 2 is verse 26 and verse 27 in chapter 1. The reason that I mention that is because you need to understand the process of events of what took place, right? Okay. The reason for that, look at verse 18. And the Lord God said, what? What are those four words? It is not good. That's the first time God said that, right? God's created everything in the world up till verse 26 in chapter 1, and he said it's good, it's good, it's good. Everything he created, God saw that it was good. This is the first time God has created something and said it is not good. And he said, it is not good. What about man was not good? That he be alone. It is not good. So what did God do? Well, verse 19 on down through the end of the chapter tells us about the creation of Eve. God took a rib from his side. That's the first time it happened. This happened too when God wanted to create something else. When God created all the other animals, he created them straight up. He didn't take anything from Adam's side. This particular event, he took something from Adam. Now, I heard a man explain it this way. He was like, all that God created, all of this takes place in the beginning, God, and God creates everything, and mankind is the crescendo of God's creation. And then God creates mankind. It's like, well, this is not good. That man should be alone. This didn't happen by chance. God did this intentionally. And God is letting us know that it's not good for man to be alone. So what happened? He made Eve. He put them together. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and shall cleave to his wife. Then you go back to chapter 1, verse 28. God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth, subdue it. All of this, come back down to 31. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was what? Very good. God put together the first marriage, backed up and said, that's good. Very good. Very good. All right? Marriage is good. If you have found that marriage is not good, it's not marriage's fault. That's what I want you to see. That may sound like a simple point, but it's a very important point. If marriage is not good for you, it's not marriage that's the issue. It's the way you are conducting marriage. It's the way you are trying to operate the marriage that's causing the issue. Marriage has a 100% chance of success when done in the way that God put it together, when it operates according to his word and the way he does things. All right, I'm out. You ever see anybody do this? They just don't matter. They're through, they're gone. They're going to give the marriage the deuces, they're out, right? All right, why? Because what happens is, often in a marriage, what people see is that it goes one way, it goes bad, 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 and the more they try, the worse it gets, because they're going to do everything but do it the Lord's way, right? And because why? Let me back up. I'm going to get ahead of myself. I'll probably hit a slide here about it in a minute, but I need to say this right now. Anything that is good in life is hard. And it's good for you young folks to understand that now. Anything that is good in life is hard. If you are going to pursue a college education, it is hard. Can it be helpful for you in the future? Absolutely. But it is going to be hard, right? If you are going to have a marriage and it function properly, it is not only possible, it is biblical, but it is hard. The easy way out is when it gets difficult, say, I'm gone. I'm through with this. Okay? This is the easy way out. I'm just going to get out. I can't take it anymore. Rather than try and seek help, rather than go to somebody who could give us some counsel, rather than try to look at the biblical way, rather than making the sacrifice that I know I need to make for my marriage, I'm going to do the last selfish thing that I can do in my marriage and tell you I'm gone. Right? And that's a major issue. Major issue. It is the easy way out. It is also the weak way out. Not the spiritually strong way out. All right. Sometimes it may seem that things will only get better if you leave. Sometimes it can seem in your marriage that things will get better if you leave. Grass is always greener on the other side, right? This is not true, and it is a lie from the devil. This is a lie from the devil. Things will not get better, they will get exponentially worse. Because what's going to happen, let me see if I put this in there, they're going to get more difficult. Because what's going to happen is most people will remarry, and they're going to take the same nature that tanked the first marriage into the second marriage, and it's going to be another train wreck and dumpster fire. Why? Because you've got to change you. If you're going into marriage with false ideas, if you're going into marriage with a wrong perception of what's being accomplished, if you're going into marriage of what you can get out of it, going back to last week, and not being what you can give to it, then you're going to take that same train wreck idea into another marriage and you're going to tank it as well. Okay? This is what we see from the woman of the well last week, right? That's what Christ changes us. So the point is that we need to understand the essence of marriage so that we can allow Christ to change us and we can give to our marriage and we can do the hard things and sacrifice ourselves so that our marriages can function properly. Because marriage is about self-sacrifice. In every way, marriage is about self-sacrifice. Go back to the beginning. What is marriage? The essence of marriage. What is it? To reflect Christ in the church, right? He gave himself on the cross for us, correct? And we are to put ourselves a living sacrifice on the altar for Christ. He died for us. We're to die for him. This is how marriage works. It is to be sacrificial for one another. It is not to be selfish. This is mine. Expect this to work. And we're going to end up living as singles together in the same house. You have your stuff, I have my stuff, and we'll call ourselves married. But there is no marriage because there is no sacrifice, and both parties are miserable, right? Marriage is hard. It is designed that way because anything good in life, anything worth having or worth doing is going to be difficult. There we go. All right. We can't, and let me mention this too, anything good in life is difficult, but also worth the sacrifice, right? Anything, there's never a time, and let me just say this is across the board. There's never a time in life that we'll sacrifice something for the Lord and say, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Because the Lord always gives us more and gives us more abundantly than what we've sacrificed. Can't go in unwilling. You cannot go into a marriage unwilling to work or sacrifice anything and expect things to work out well. You cannot go in with that attitude without being sacrificial and expect things are going to work out well. All right. Marriage requires forgiveness. Just a couple more slides, guys. Marriage requires forgiveness, right? In order to be married, you're going to have to be forgiven. That's certainly with us in Christ. It's the key. We don't forgive him because he's never done anything wrong, but he has forgiven us everything. Forgiveness is extremely important in the marriage relationship and is important in every relationship. Why is forgiveness so important? Inevitably, people are going to sin against you. This is just base things, right? Not only is that true in marriage, it's true in any relationship. Somebody's going to sin against you. Somebody's going to make you mad. Your husband or your wife are definitely going to do that to you without doubt. And this sin is going to be like poison in your heart, right? And the more you keep that poison in there, the more it's going to poison the well, and that's all that's going to come out. The only way to get that poison out of your heart is to forgive. Forgiveness is the only way to get that poison out of you. And so what you're going to do is you're going to hold back, and you're going to hold back on that forgiveness because you don't want to let them off easy. You're going to hold back on that forgiveness because if you forgive them, it makes what they did seem minute or little, and it's like letting them off the hook or something like that. When actually, I heard this reference, a good one too. What you're doing is when somebody sins against you, you're not letting them off your hook. You're taking them off your hook. You're putting them on God's hook. That's the hook they need to be on, and God will take care of it. But you need to forgive them to get that poison out of you. Otherwise, it's going to affect you, because if you choose not to forgive, that is a sin against them. So what you're doing is returning the sin. By them sinning against you and you not forgiving, you sending them back against them. All right. So forgiveness is a huge part of marriage. You need to forgive, work together. If something happens, let's just say major issue, trust is involved and has been destroyed in a relationship, work together then to restore the trust. And what you need to do is the hurt party gets to be the one to make the ground rules. All right. So let's just give a hypothetical situation here. A man's got an issue with his phone. He's been talking to people he don't need to be talking to. And so she's hurt. Her trust issues are destroyed. What do? She gets to make the ground rules now because we're going to work through this. She gets to make the ground rules. She gets to tell you who you can and cannot talk to on your phone. And you have to prove by your phone deleting contacts or whatever it is that she tells you in order to restore her trust in you. She gets to make those rules. Don't think you can sit back and say, well, no, it's my phone and I get to keep it and you ought to trust me again. No, that's foolish. That's what that is. That's not even, let me just say it this way. It's idiotic if you think that she's going to have and should have trust in you again after doing something like that, and then you think that she should react that way. No, she gets to make the ground rules, or rather the hurt party, whoever that is, gets to make the ground rules on how that trust is restored. All right. The rule of covenant. Come what may, we will stay. That rhymes. All right. Questions? Any questions? All right. If not, thank you so much for coming. Let me turn this phone off.